Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a break from guitar building topics, and I'm actually going to talk about guitar playing, which I never do, so that'll be fun. I really want to come at this though from the perspective of a builder and just give you a couple quick tips on things that can, well, really affect the tone while you're playing. Because that's what's most important to me, is getting a good clean sound, and usually that's what's most important to any guitar maker. So there's plenty of videos out there about technical proficiency. That's not what this is about. This is about how to play the guitar in a way that really showcases the instrument's tone. Okay, so number one is don't smother the back of the guitar. This is number one for a reason, because it's extremely common, big pet peeve of mine. I see a lot of people doing it, especially if you have kind of a big beer gut. What you do is you end up pressing the back of the guitar against your body, which completely kills the back. So if you watched my last video on the acoustic function of the sides, if you haven't watched that, go check that out. It explains why how the top and the back are coupled together. So if you take one out of the equation, as you would be doing when you press your stomach up against the guitar like that, well, then you're really killing the sound in a big way, and you may not even realize it. It really opens things up to hold the guitar this way. Okay, next, don't restrict your right hand, which is your picking hand or your plucking hand if you're a finger picker like I am. Don't restrict that hand to just one area of the strings. This is also a very common thing that I see people doing, and for a lot of styles of music it works out perfectly fine. However, there's a lot more voicing and dynamics involved with the guitar that you can get out of simply adjusting where this picking or plucking hand is played. So for example, this, just a hair behind the sound hole, is the common area that people tend to either pick or pluck. What you're missing out on is a little bit more variety in the voice by simply moving it back here. Right? So you can play a little of that and a little back here as well. In actual use, you'll hear this a lot with percussive fingerstyle players, a lot of acoustic players like that, where they will play through a section and then end on that. It has a lot of resolution to it to play back here by the bridge. So we talked about the middle, we talked about back here by the bridge. Another area is right up here in the middle, right by the 12th fret. And as you can hopefully hear, I don't have a very nice audio setup for recording, so I'm literally just recording into the camera. So some of the things I'm talking about you might not hear like I'm hearing here live. So up by the 12th fret, it has a very tubular sound. That's really the best way of describing it. But what's really going on there is up by the middle of the vibrating length of the string, which is around the 12th fret, what you're hearing is the fundamental of the note mostly. There's very little overtones there. Whereas when you play back here, you have a lot of overtones. Very fundamental up here. Beautiful. So you can play around with that as well. Now when you're writing music, consider using the open notes in certain situations rather than the fretted notes. At least consider the difference between those two notes. You might think a G is a G. It's going to sound the same whether you play it here or whether you play it here. but really it doesn't. There's a lot of complexity to the character of the note and a lot more sustain to the open notes in general. You can build a guitar in certain ways where that might not be the case, but in general, you pick up any guitar and just play around, even with play an open chord like an open E, right? Listen to that, and then play a barred E. Now, of course, a lot of the notes in this chord over here are up an octave, but the point is still the same, that this decays much quicker. The sound is much more short-lived for these bar chords and a lot less complex. Listen to that, so much warmth. So anyway, the reason to consider that when you're writing music is those short-lived notes are great for when you're playing fast, or even you're just playing in the middle of a passage. So you want all those notes, one after the other, to be heard and then die away, and not be overly complex, because the complexity of the character of each individual note, if they're all open notes, it's going to kind of get muddy and they're all going to blend together. However, when you're ending a passage, you're reaching resolution, it sounds really great to end on a chord with a lot of character. Like an open chord like this, or this. Rather than something that's a little more muted like this. You can do that with single notes too. So if you're ending a passage on a single note, I would opt over that A right there, over, say, this A. Again, I don't know if you can actually hear the difference on the camera, but I can certainly hear it here. That dies off a little quicker, and it's just not as warm as this. The next thing is to play to the instrument's strengths. So depending on what type of instrument you pick up, it's going to be better suited to some things and not to others. I wouldn't pick up an archtop guitar and judge it for its warmth and sustain or anything like that, like I would for a flat top guitar, like the one I have here. Because that type of guitar, the archtop, is designed to have short-lived, punchy notes that sound very bright. That's very different from the warm-sounding, long sustain flat top guitar. That bright, punchy sound is great for jazz music. That's why archtops are typically called jazz guitars. So you have all these. I can't play jazz music, but you know what I mean. You have these punchy notes played one after the other. They don't all blend together because you don't want them to. You want the note to come out and then die away to make room for the next note coming in right behind it. Same thing with flamenco music. If you play in that style, you should have a guitar that doesn't have a lot of sustain to it. It should have short-lived notes. Another thing to consider is that some guitars sound really, really great in alternate tunings. And you don't really know until you down-tune it into an alternate tuning and try it out. So like, for example, this is Dadgad, D-A-D, G-A-D, which by the way is a fantastic tuning to try it out. If you haven't tried out that tuning, or any alternate tuning, I would start with Dadgad. It's really fun, really easy. I love it. I down-tune my guitars into Dadgad all the time. But also, I mention this because if you have this guitar lying around that just sounds dead in standard tuning, tune it down and you just might find that it really comes to life in an alternate tuning. Another thing that I like to do is play in free time, and I really do think this is a result of me becoming a builder and starting to think about tone a lot more when I play. Because when I play in free time, I can speed up or slow down the notes as I please as I go. And it actually can sound really pleasant when you do this. So I'll give you just a quick example. I'll just noodle around on here. So especially when you're noodling around, by the way, that's the time to where you really gain a lot from playing in free time. Obviously, if you're practicing to play with a band, you should probably practice with a metronome and work on your time. But when you're just playing by yourself, I think it can stir up a lot of creativity in you to play in free time and to particularly slow it down at fast or difficult sections so that you can really articulate those notes and pay attention to the full complexity of each note as you play it. So I'll play a little free time here. So something like that. The point of that is that when I started to play fast, I would actually slow myself down a little bit just so I could articulate those notes a little bit more. And I think it's very helpful because it creates an emphasis on the notes themselves and not on keeping time or on technical proficiency.